So whenever your mind tries to drift, to thinking or blaming somebody else, no. You want to focus on yourself. This is the first place we have dominion. And you can only have dominion if you start off focusing on yourself. I'm a strong believer that every problem has a solution. And I'm also a strong believer that every solution isn't necessarily the same. When I'm talking about tracking your thoughts, because a thought generates a feeling, the feeling generates the emotion that then goes to the action that then leads to the consequence. But you got to be able to identify the feeling. If you're able to identify the feeling and stop there, then you could probably process it and go back to the thought. Okay, well, what generated this feeling? What thought was attached to that feeling? Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the FCS Prep Podcast, where I am your host, Dr. Keith Fairclough, and we are going right back into it with self-reflection and the strategies on how we can learn to self-reflect. But before we start there, please, if this is your first time here, like, comment, subscribe, and share. If this is not your first time here, like, comment, share, because hopefully you're already subscribed. And guys, if you need help, men and women, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all need help, please reach out. I have links in the description below that lead to my other social media accounts that have different strategies and things like that, motivation on there. There's also Psychology Today where you can reach out to me. We can set up an appointment. My email is also there. So if you need help, if you just have a question, maybe you don't want to have a session, maybe you just have a question, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So without further ado, let's get into this. Let's start. And again, this is about self-reflection. If this is your first time here, you're probably going to want to touch the other two videos, right? Because this is the last half of the strategies about how to self-reflect. The first video talks about the values of self-reflection. And the next video after that has the first half of the strategies. It's about journaling, breathing, daily gratitude, affirmations, all that jazz. So if you want to get a little bit more about it, go check those videos out. There's going to be a link right here so you can click on that. Let's start. The first strategy today that we're going to discuss is self-focus. The best way I can describe self-focus is almost like shutting out the whole world when you come to a situation. You're only focusing on yourself. You're not focusing on what this person did, what that person said, or anything like that. No, you're only focusing on yourself. What did I do? What did I feel? What did I think? Was that behavior correct? What can I do different in the future? You're focusing on yourself, right? So whenever your mind tries to drift, to thinking or blaming somebody else, no. You want to focus on yourself. I had some students I was working with this week. That was a big thing we were working on because the immediate thing, and a lot of my students do this as well, but the immediate thing, oh, they made me do this. They made me mad. They made me do this. They're so mean. If they weren't like this and all this stuff, and they were not focusing on themselves. The only factor in that situation that they have control over. That's the thing about self-focus. You're focusing solely on yourself because that is the only variable. That's the only thing in that situation you have control over. That's the only thing that you can change and manipulate is yourself. There's nothing you can do. If you focus on someone being mad at you or yelling at you or whatever, and that's all you focus on, oh, they're so mad, they're so mean, they're so this, they're so that, I wish them, and you can't change somebody else. So you've got to focus on yourself. Self-focus. It's not selfish. If anything, it's very thoughtful, because if you could think and stay focused on yourself, which this is going to tie into the other strategies as well. But if you can stay focused on yourself, you will realize you have more control and command in these situations than you give yourself credit for. You have more power than you give yourself credit for. Remember, this is part of our godhood. This is part of us having dominion, right? The first place we have dominion is here. This is the first place we have dominion. Before we go anywhere else, before we conquer anything else, before we overcome anything else, this is the first place we have dominion. And you can only have dominion if you start off focusing on yourself. The next strategy, again, these are all going to tie into self-focus as well. But the next strategy is I want you to try to imagine a different result, a different outcome based on and different options based off the things you could choose to do differently in the future, right? So let's just say you got into an argument with your significant other. Instead of, again, focusing on them, on what they need to do and how bad they are and how narcissistic they are and all these things like that, before you start there, how could that conversation have gone differently? What did I say that I probably didn't mean? What did I do that I probably shouldn't have done? Did I insult them? Did I do this? Did I violate my own beliefs in this conversation? Okay, maybe I did. What could I have done different next time? Maybe I won't get so loud, or maybe I'll stop and listen, or maybe I'll walk away, or maybe there's so many different options that we have and we could use and we could choose to deal with these situations that we encounter in our lives. Again, earlier this week, same students, we were having this conversation, and I was asking them essentially, what tools do you have? What other things can you do besides throwing hands? And all they could say is, that's all I got. And I'm like, well, we need to get you some more tools because that cannot be your only option. Because I'm a strong believer that every problem has a solution. And I'm also a strong believer that every solution isn't necessarily the same. So some solutions may work. Throwing hands may work, but the consequences thereof are not favorable. So see, maybe you outscream your partner, but that's not going to be a favorable outcome, because even if you win, you still lose. Problem has been solved, but you still lose. You lose out in that situation. You lose out in intimacy. You do it to your boss, you lose out in your job. Someone that's younger or maybe even older that gets into fighting, you go to jail, you lose your freedom. So we need to stop and think about the different options we have available to us and the outcomes that could possibly come from those options. So that's the next step. Very, very important for us to do that. It's a big, big, big part of self-reflection. The next one is you want to identify and track your thoughts. Very important to identify and track your thoughts. The reason why is because, and we're not going to get into beliefs because beliefs really generate the filter through which we look through a situation. But we're not going to get to that today because that's a little bit deep. It's going to require a whole lot more time than we got time for here today. Plus, it's going to veer off from our topic. So when I'm talking about tracking your thoughts, because a thought generates a feeling, the feeling generates the emotion that then goes to the action that then leads to the consequence. So if you can stop yourself, if you can focus on yourself and stop and think, well, why am I thinking that? Why am I getting so defensive? Why did I answer that way? Sometimes I've done that. I remember there's this one time, me and my wife got into it some time ago, and I was talking to my son, and I wasn't mad at him, but because I was still heated, I was still, right? My tone came across as rough to him. And so I had to stop and think afterwards, like, dang, yeah, I guess my tone was kind of rough, because I was kind of, I was upset, I was frustrated, but not at him. So when I was talking to him about it, and he explained to me like, yeah, I thought I was in trouble because of how you were talking. And I explained to him, hey, this is what it really was. But I had to stop and think about myself. I had to stop and think about those thoughts. And that was more of an action more than a thought. But I had to think about why I was doing that action, right? And the thoughts generated from that, because I wasn't, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she did that, whatever, right? But I had to think about that thought. And when I thought about the thought, I was able to go and correct the situation with my son. And this is not the only time I've done things like that. So there are plenty of other times where I have to track my thoughts, right? So I remember there's one time when I was doing an event at the school, and all these thoughts are going through my head, right? It was like the marshmallow, party thing, marshmallow snowball fight. And in my mind, I was thinking all these, I had to start tracking my thoughts. Like there weren't good thoughts going through my head. Like, oh my gosh, I'm all by myself doing this, whatever, right? Getting snappy and things like that. So I had to stop and like, okay, bro, what's going on? Why are you thinking like this? Why are you doing this? Like, what is going on? Why are these thoughts going through your head? And I started processing the thoughts that were going through my head and recognizing that these thoughts, these intrusive thoughts, were not accurate. They weren't real. They weren't true. And so I had to just change how I was thinking, right? Do a lot of self-talk and talking to myself. I had to change what I was thinking because I was tracking my thoughts. I was able to change that and manage myself. And then also go and correct some of the things that I did, because I did snap at some people and I shouldn't have. I was wrong. And I had to, by being able to track those thoughts and recognize, dang, no, I actually did do wrong. I was able to go back and make that thing right. So tracking your thoughts. I know we're spending a little bit of time on this, but it's very important for us to track our thoughts, identify our thoughts and track them. Because if you can catch your thought, and if it's a wrong thought, you can stop the feeling from generating, which will stop the emotion and then action. And it will give you opportunity to make a different choice and a better choice. And maybe just cancel that thought out altogether. Speaking of feelings, the next step in self-awareness and self-reflection is identify your feelings. How are you feeling? This is almost like a step further in the process for the thought, The thought comes first, but a lot of times, guys, and if you've experienced this, I'm sure we all have, we experience the feeling before we know what the thought is, because it comes so fast. Thoughts move so fast, and their feelings come so fast. So when someone says something, I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm frustrated. That's usually the first thing. But we have to be able to recognize that, identify the feeling. Okay, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is what I'm experiencing right now. All right, why am I experiencing it like that? Like, what's going on? What happened? Was I offended? Was one of my beliefs, challenged? Was I disappointed? Like, what happened? What generated this feeling? But you got to know what the feeling is, because feelings are just signals for us to do something. And sometimes we can get the wrong signals by misinterpreting other people's intentions and actions. So we have to be able to identify that feeling. Know what that feeling is. They have tons of feeling charts like in the world, right? Tons. You can search them up online, Google them or whatever. But you got to be able to identify the feeling. If you're able to identify the feeling and stop there, then you could probably process it and go back to the thought. Okay, well, what generated this feeling? What thought was attached to that feeling? This person thinks that they're smarter than me, or this person thinks that they're better than me, or they don't think I love them, or whatever the case may be. But if you're able to identify the feeling, it can give you a good starting point to be able to track backwards and even identify that thought if you can't catch the thought before the feeling comes. Last strategy in self-awareness and self-reflection is you got to be able to identify your physical state. What is your body doing, right? Because your body a lot of times is going to give you signals. See these, I was talking about emotions. I'm a big believer that we have feelings, right? And our feelings generate the energy that then goes into emotions. And I believe emotions, and this isn't science or anything like that, or grammar or whatever, but emotion is what I call energy in motion. And I also didn't make that up. I got that from Tony Robbins. But energy in motion, right? So it's a transference between a feeling and an action. Feelings generate actions. Think about it. When we do something, it's usually based off of a feeling. I'm going to go run because I feel great. Or I'm going to yell at this person because I'm angry, Or I'm going to cry because I'm sad. Usually there's emotion. There's bodily functions going on that it's almost like signals from the feeling that say, hey, when you're feeling A, you need to act like B, right? If I'm feeling sad, I need to cry. My head needs to be down. My shoulders slumped. I need to talk low and isolate. Like, there's emotions that go along with feelings. So if you can identify what these motions are, again, it's a little bit further in the step, right? So you get the thought that generates the feeling that creates the energy to get called emotion that goes and then creates the action, right? So it's just another step in the process. If you can catch yourself at any of these steps, you could work your way backwards. That's why it's important to have all these different steps. And anyways, our bodies, right? They can give us signals like what's going on. Is our heart rate going up? I'll give you an example. I know for me, if I feel like I'm under attack, whether it's physically or emotionally or whatnot, my body starts signaling like it's a legit attack. My heart rate goes up. I might talk faster, like pressured speech, blood pressure goes up. Like, these are some of the things that I've noticed. I get a little bit more tense. And there's some situations where if I get defensive, I literally start closing off. I shut down. Like, everything just shuts down. Like, it's almost like a lockdown happens when I start to become defensive. And there's a physical motion associated with that. But because I'm starting able to recognize some of these physical sensations going on in my body when these things happen, I'm able to then, okay, something's not right. Like, wait, why am I shutting down like this? Like, I give a perfect example. This was a defining moment in my life. It was huge. I think it was like a Sunday morning. My wife asked me a question. I forgot what the question was, but she asked me a question. Whatever it was, I became defensive immediately. And I recognized the shift in my posture, the shift in my demeanor. I noticed the shift in everything. And I was like, oh boy, what's going on? All she did was ask me a question. It wasn't even a bad question. She just asked me a question, like, what's going on? And so then by being able to recognize that, okay, and again, I didn't analyze the feeling first, right? I didn't analyze the thought first. I analyzed my bodily sensations first, and that's what triggered it for me. So wherever you catch yourself in this self-reflection and self-awareness process, it's the idea that you catch yourself and do something different. So in that situation, I told myself, like, hey, listen, all she did was ask a question. Chill out, relax, just engage her in the conversation. It's okay. It's all right. That opened me back up. We had a conversation. It was a great conversation. We finished out. It was good. Like no harm, no foul. Everything was good. But you got to be able to recognize these bodily sensations. You know, whether it's your temperature rises or your stomach turns in knots, or maybe you get a headache, or there's maybe some tightness in your muscles, or whatever, something like that. Heart rate, maybe you start sweating. You got to be able to recognize whatever these bodily sensations are, your physical state. Identify what those things are. So you can then start tracking, okay, well, I when I get like this, when I feel this feeling or this emotion, my body gets like this. So guys, that's it. Quick recap over the strategies for self-reflection, part 2, or really this is part 2, part 3, depending on how you look at it, right? Strategies is part 2, but the whole series is part 3. Self-focus, number 1. And again, all these other ones kind of going with it too. Self-focus. Focus on yourself. Don't focus on anybody else. Don't cast blame on anybody else. Focus on yourself. The next step, think of different outcomes and different options you could choose to have a different outcome for yourself, a different thing happen for you. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. But if you can stop and think of all the different options available to you, because guess what? Guys, you have tons of options available to you. Tons. There's so many different things and choices you can make. That's the beauty of being human. We have choices. So engage in that process. Exercise your godhood. Exercise your ability to make a decision, to make a choice. It doesn't always have to be the same. You don't always have to be angry and yell and scream. You don't always have to fight. You don't always have to cry. You don't always have to compromise. You don't always have to give up. There are so many other choices that we can make. Driving this point home, this one's really, really important, guys, because if the more you understand that you have choices, that means the more able you will be to change your outcome. So that's the second step, right? Third step, track your thoughts. Identify your thoughts and track your thoughts. What are those thoughts? Why are they coming up? Are they right? Are they true? You know, can I change them? Asking yourself these questions about these thoughts. If you can catch yourself that quick in the process. If you can't catch yourself that quick, catch yourself in the next step. Identify your feelings. What are you feeling? What emotion is that? Put a name to it. Again, there's charts everywhere. So types of feelings and emotions. Put a name to it though. And then ask yourself the question, just why am I feeling this? What about this situation is generating this feeling in me, this sign in me? And the last one, identify your physical state. What is your body doing? If you can catch yourself at this state, it's kind of like the last bastion, right? The last line, right? If you can get yourself here, you can still reel it all back in. Asking yourself, okay, why am I feeling like this? My stomach is in knots. What's going on? Oh, I'm scared because I have this speech. Oh, it's because I haven't practiced the speech. Oh, but the speech is 3 weeks away. Oh, so maybe I should just practice it, because if I practice it, then I won't be scared. And if I'm not scared, then my stomach won't be in knots. Yeah. So it's something as simple as that, being able to recognize what your body is telling you and then backtrack that to the feeling and backtrack that to the thought. And when we get even really good, we can actually backtrack it all the way back to what our beliefs are, because our beliefs, like I said, they color the situations, they interpret the situations, and then that interpretation is what generates the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions, and then the consequences. All right. So guys, that's it. That's all I got for you. Listen, stay tuned. Got a lot of great stuff coming your way, guys. We're not stopping. We finally hit 1,000 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you. I know I had the 1,000 subscriber thank you video, but I just want to thank you guys again for always showing up. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for watching. Definitely appreciate you. Again, if you need help, please reach out. I'm here to help. I want you all to have the best possible lives that you could even imagine, right? That's the whole purpose of FCS, improving the world by improving you, right? Because when we get better, our worlds get better. Our world gets better. So I love you all. Y'all take care. Have a great, awesome, and blessed day, and I'll see you all soon.